In this lesson, we shall be discussing conservation. So what is the definition of conservation? It can be defined as the careful protection and preservation of natural resources to prevent exploitation and destruction. Remember, we talk about natural resources in the definition. So what is natural resources? They are any materials or substances from the earth which support life and are consumed by humans. So when we talk about natural resources, they are natural materials or substances, and these materials, they support life and also they are consumed by what? By humans. So what are now the examples of natural resources? We have various examples of natural resources. We have oil, we have gas, we have soil, we have air, we have water, we have wildlife, we even have plants. So all things that naturally occur which support life and is consumed by humans, they are what? They belong to the example of natural resources. We have two types of resources. We have the renewable resources and we have the non-renewable resources. So what are renewable resources? These are resources that can be replaced naturally, as these have endless supply. So in these renewable resources, they are what? We cannot consume them. We cannot finish the what? The consumption. Why? Because they can be renewed. They can be replaced naturally. So examples of these renewable resources, we talk about what? The thermal energy. We also have what? The solar energy. Ever since the inception of solar energy, it cannot what? They cannot finish the what? The using. So the second type is what? The non-renewable resources. These resources cannot be replaced by natural means as quick as these are consumed. So when these non-renewable resources are consumed, that is what? That is the end of it all. It cannot be replaced by any natural means. Example, we have the minerals and we have the what? The fossil fuels. So then we now say conservation is the act of preserving, guiding, protecting, and using things. And what are the things? Natural resources wisely. Then we talk about water conservation. Depends on the use and management of water. The use and management of water for the good of all consumers. Then imagine in the house, you are told that there will be no water supply for 2 days. Then how will you be able to cope? How will you be able to use the available water that you have in the house for the rest what? 2 days. Number one is what? Storing the water. Storage. The first thing is what? To store water. Another thing is you should use water wisely without wasting water. Use water wisely without wasting water. And another thing is you should learn to minimize the use of water. Even when water is readily available, reduce or minimize the use of water. There are times that you need to use just a bucket of water. Learn to reduce or minimize the use of water, even when water is readily available. So this is how you can domestically minimize or conserve water. Are we together? So what are now the ways to address water scarcity, which is also the method of what? Of conserving water. The method of what? Of conserving water. Number one is what? You create awareness. You let people know that though fine, even if there is water, we need to learn how to what? How to conserve water in case of what? In case of scarcity. So the first thing we need to do is what? We need to create awareness. And also number two is that be responsible for what? For the use of water. Use water judiciously and then we should reduce wastage. So these are the ways whereby we can what? We can conserve water. Are we getting it now? So the first one is what? Create awareness. Number 2 is what? Be responsible for the use of water. Number 3, use water judiciously and then reduce wastage. So these are the domestic method by which we can conserve water. Then what about in the industry? Now in some industries where water is needed, not all industry requires what? Clean water. We can use another form of water or use method that require less water in our industry. And then in the industry, we should learn to recycle and reuse the water. And then we can recirculate the water, which is a process whereby we have what? A cooling tower. So these are the industrial method of what? Of conserving water. Also in the agricultural method of conserving water, which is irrigation, we can use the form of sprinkle irrigation or drip irrigation, which will reduce the amount of water that is used to supply water to the what? To the farmland. And also it can also reduce what? Overdrafting of groundwater. And we can also use what? Night irrigation. As you all know that at the night there is always a high rate of transpiration. So if irrigation is done in the night, it reduces what? The use of water. And do timely and need based irrigation. So this method, they are the agricultural method of what? Of conserving water. Are we getting it now? The next one is what? Deforestation. We should avoid deforestation. As important as plant is, avoid what? Deforestation. So we should learn to what? Whenever we cut a tree down, we should learn to what? To replace, which is a process called afforestation. So when there are trees, it increases the humidity. And once humidity is increased, it also increases the amount of rainfall. And once there is a high amount of rainfall, there will be what? More plantations, which will result into what? Into afforestation. So that's the fourth method. And the last one is pollution. As much as possible, we should avoid water pollution. Remember, we talk about water pollution. So as much as possible, we should what? We should avoid water pollution. So this is what? Pollution aspect of what? Of conserving water. We've talked about the domestic, we've talked about the industrial, we've talked about the agricultural, we've talked about deforestation, and we've talked about pollution. And other method of conserving water is when we talk about what? Rainwater harvestation. When rain falls, we should learn to what? To collect and store the rainwater, which helps to what? Which helps to conserve the water within the house or in what? Or in the industry. So we have two types as is being displayed. And number 2 is what? Construction of dams. Construction of dam, as you all know that dam is what? Artificial way of what? Of generating water. So that's when we talk about what? Water conservation. It helps to regulate water flow and distribute them evenly. We have the large dam and we have the small dam. Then we now talk about wildlife conservation. So what is wildlife conservation? Is it the practice or an activity in which humans protect animals and plant species and their habitats? You know, in the aspect of wildlife, we talk about what? Animals, plant species. So in this wildlife conservation, by human efforts, we are protecting animals and their habitat from going into into extinction. So why, or what is the reason behind wildlife conservation? Wildlife conservation is very important because wildlife play an important role in maintaining the ecological balance and conserve wild animals population and protection of public land. Take for instance now, if there is no conservation of wildlife, lion, all these animals will have been killed or will have gone into extinction and will not have any record of wild animals. So that is why wildlife also need to be conserved, need to be protected, and even in their environment, their habitat, it also must be what? Must be protected. Take for instance now, had they been there is dinosaur. We all believe what a dinosaur. These are when we talk about in the aspect of genetics. Had they been dinosaur has been conserved. Till date, we still have an animal called dinosaur. So dinosaur is an animal that has gone into extinction. Why? Because it was not conserved. It was not protected. From what? From exploitations. So what are now the various ways whereby we can conserve wild animals? Number one is what? National park, game reserves. Game reserve must be established whereby animals can have easy movement, free range movement. Game reserve, and we have various game reserves in what? In Nigeria. The second one is zoological gardens, or we can call it a zoo. Zoo are there to keep animals, to keep wildlife from going into what? Into extinctions. And another way whereby we can conserve wildlife is to avoid poaching. And what is poaching? Hunting. We should avoid people from killing animals, from killing wildlife. Then we now move on to soil conservation. How can we conserve soil? Number one, avoid bush burning. When we avoid bush burning, it helps to maintain the nutrients within the soil. Another thing to conserve soil is avoid overgrazing. When the number of cattle or animals grazing on a particular piece of land has exceeded the carrying capacity, it affects the soil fertility. So in order to conserve the soil, we must avoid what? We must avoid overgrazing. And another way whereby we can conserve the soil is agricultural practice. And what are the various agricultural practices that we have? We have crop rotation, we have mixed cropping, we have means of irrigation, even making ridges. They are also what? Agricultural practice, and it helps to improve what? Soil. And then we talk about conservation of forest. We should disengage from what? From deforestation. What is deforestation? The cutting down of trees without replacing them. So in the forest, we must what? We must discourage deforestation. And then lastly, okay, the penultimate one is natural resources. There should be what? Control or a proper price for what? For perishable materials. That's number one. Number two is in the process of mining should be done appropriately and correctly. So in the aspect of these natural resources, if mining is done correctly, it help to conserve natural resources. And the last one is the air. We need to conserve the air. A chimney must be built in order to avoid what? To avoid the atmospheric environment being polluted. So a chimney needs to be built. So these are the various methods whereby we can conserve natural resources, be it wildlife, soil, water.